So let's continue our discussion of ES6 by looking at scoping and how it's different from scoping in ES5, or at least how it can be different from scoping in ES5. And I want to start off by looking at how scoping in ES5 works. So I'm going to write a little file here, and it's going to, and we can run it straight in Node. We don't have to run it through Tracuer. It's just going to be ES5. So I'll start off by putting a function in here, and I'll declare a variable and write it out to the console. And then we'll call this function. And no surprise, what this is going to do is going to print 42. Okay. Let's try, however, to access this variable outside of demo 1. And if it doesn't work, we're going to catch an exception and print an error out with something that says crash with excuse. And then the message of the exception. Okay? Let's try this. So what this means is that this line here failed, and 11 was the line it executed. Now so what does that mean? Well, obviously the variable outside of the function is not accessible. There is, however, a way in JavaScript to make line 9 execute, and it's simply to remove the var keyword. So now if I save this, we get 42 twice. Even though, and the linter's going crazy, telling me, hey, you've got undeclared variables and everything. But still it works. Now you should never do this, because what it means is that when you don't use the var keyword, the variable is scoped to the global context, and global variables are not a good idea. But there's something else here that's interesting. And this is kind of the big one. So I'm going to write a little for loop here, and very predictable what it does on the surface. We'll just log I out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to log it again. I'm going to prefix it so we can tell, so we can see line 8 is actually executing. Now I'm going to run this again. And so what we get is we get 42 from line 3, then line 6 gives us 0 through 9, and here's line 7. Now that's not minus 10, that's actually 10 with a dash in front of it. But notice what happened. We're accessing I. We're able to do this outside of this for loop. Now in Java, C#, and other languages, you wouldn't be able to do this. So what does this mean? This means that in ES5, you can scope a variable to a function, but not to a code block. So ES6 changes this. ES6, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this scoping-es6.js, and open this, and I'm going to first of all paste it in here. Here's one thing that you have to do to make this act like it would in C# or Java. Change this var to let. So now let's put this into an ES6 file we can run through Tracuer. So I'm going to need to do my module exports and put that in an object. Put this down here. This over here. Put this down one, and make this a function. Okay, and remove this. So now this is in ES6, so let's go down here to Tracuer and run Tracuer --out equals build slash, what are we calling this? Scoping.es5.js and scoping.es6.js. And so now this should compile it for us. Whoa, lots of errors. So let's go back up here to the first one and see what we've got. So we've got an unexpected token let at line 6. But the problem is Tracer's supposed to understand ES6 and let is part of ES6. And that's true. Tracer does understand let if you tell it to. So it's turned off by default. So what you have to do is you have to add this, this block binding flag and set it to true. And now if we run it, everything's going to work. And I can go into my main.js file now and say var demo equals require build scoping .es5 and then demo.demo1. And if we do a node with main.js, it's going to crash. Why? Because I is not defined on this line console log. And why is that? Because we use the let keyword instead of var, and so I is not accessible outside of the for loop. Now, if we change this back to var, we can run this through Tracer still, and there's no problems. But this time it'll work. So you can still use the var syntax in ES6. It's just not really recommended that you do it. But I personally, this is one of my favorites. Everybody's been waiting for this one. It's driven a lot of people nuts over time, and it's good that they finally fixed that. So we'll look at more in the next video.